Chapter 3 Whispering Wind Girl 19. A Pony on the Riverside. The Lakota summer sun beat down mercilessly on Ahiga and his wolf brother and sister, Ahote and Hopi. Sweat beaded on Ahiga's forehead despite the cool water of the river lapping at his bare feet. Today's fishing wasn't as bountiful as usual. The fish seemed skittish, darting out of reach just as Ahiga lunged with his spear. Frustration gnawed at him, but Ahote nudged his hand playfully, urging him not to give up. Ahiga returned a playful nip, a smile gracing his lips. Their bond, forged since they were all kid and pups, was as strong as any blood relation. Suddenly, Ahote the wolf, usually the most alert of the three, let out a low growl. Ahiga whirled around, hand instinctively falling to the knife strapped to his hip. His gaze followed Ahote's, landing on a figure at the edge of the woods across the river. It was a human, a native Indian girl with long, dark hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall. A jolt of surprise ran through young Ahiga. He rarely saw humans this far inside Lakota territory. But something about the young woman's features, the delicate native Indian face, the wide, curious eyes, triggered a faint memory, a bittersweet pang in his chest. It was a memory from a time before the fire, before the soldiers, a time shrouded in darkness. Young man Ahiga squinted, trying to pierce the distance. The girl was bending down, scooping water into a leather basket. Her movements were graceful, strangely familiar. A forgotten image flickered in his mind. His mother kneeling by a stream, her laughter echoing in the breeze. His sisters, Dakota and Iona, were playing at her feet. A sharp pang of grief lanced through young native Indian man Ahiga, quickly followed by a fierce protectiveness. This young native Indian woman, whoever she was, reminded him of his lost family. He couldn't just leave her there, vulnerable. "Ahote, stay here with Hopi," Ahiga whispered, his voice tight. "I'll check it out." Ahote the wolf whined softly but obeyed, understanding flickering in his intelligent eyes. As the 18-year-old native Indian girl straightened up, with the full pot, Ahiga gasped. Her face, though weathered from the sun, held a distinct resemblance to Dakota. The same high cheekbones, the same kindness reflected in her eyes. Could it be? The 18-year-old native Indian girl, sensing something amiss, turned towards the reeds. Their eyes met. Her initial fear melted into surprise, then a flicker of recognition mirrored in her own gaze. Ahiga, the young native Indian man, and the Native American 18-year-old girl stood there for a long moment, a silent conversation passing between them. Ahiga knew he couldn't reveal himself just yet. The scars of the past ran deep, the distrust between humans and Lakota a festering wound. But seeing this girl, so like his sister, rekindled a spark of hope within him. Hesitantly, Ahiga, the native Indian young man, reached into his pouch and pulled out a small, intricately carved wolf figurine, a token he'd always kept close. Gently, he tossed it over the reeds, landing near the native Indian 18-year-old girl's feet. The 18-year-old native Indian girl stared at the figurine, her brow furrowing in thought. Then, a slow smile spread across her face, a mixture of wonder and understanding. Picking up the wolf's carving, she clutched it to her chest and met his gaze once more. A silent vow passed between them, a connection forged by a shared past and a glimmer of hope for the future. Ahiga, the young native Indian man, knew then that he wouldn't let this encounter be their last. He would find a way to bridge the gap, to communicate with this 18-year-old native Indian girl who held a piece of his shattered world. The whispers of the wind seemed to carry his silent promise, swirling around them like a benediction. As the girl turned and walked back towards her camp, Ahiga retreated into the river, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. He rejoined Ahote and Hopi, a new purpose burning bright in his eyes. He had found a connection, a reason to fight for a future where humans and the Lakota forest inhabitants could coexist. He knew the path wouldn't be easy, but with the Wolf brothers by his side and the memory of the girl etched in his heart, Ahiga was determined to make a difference. The encounter with a mysterious girl by the river stayed with Ahiga for days. At the same time carved wolf figurine, a constant reminder, felt warm against the pony's skin whenever she touched it. Agia only confided in Ahote and Hopi, his two wolves. The wolves, always attuned to Ahiga's emotions, listened patiently. Ahote, the more playful of the two, nudged Ahiga playfully as if urging him to act. Hopi, ever cautious, whined softly, her amber eyes reflecting a deep concern. Ahiga, the young native Indian man, understood his wolf's anxieties. Their world had been shattered by the betrayal of the soldiers. Humans were a source of fear and distrust. But something about the 18-year-old native Indian girl's gentle demeanor and the flicker of recognition in her eyes made Ahiga believe there might be more to their kind than just violence. Ahiga spent nights staring at the starlit sky, replaying the encounter in his mind. What was she doing so far from her village? Did she have any idea who he truly was? The questions gnawed at him, fueling his determination to see. Days turned into weeks, and Ahiga, the young native Indian man, under the guise of hunting, returned to the spot by the river several times. Each time, disappointment gnawed at him as he found no trace of the young native Indian young woman. He was about to give up hope when, on a particularly sweltering afternoon, a flash of dark hair caught his eye through the trees. The young native Indian young man Agia's heart pounded with anticipation as he crept closer. The native Indian young woman was there, sitting by the riverbank, her brow furrowed in concentration. But this time, she wasn't alone. A younger girl, with the same dark hair and bright eyes, sat beside her, their heads bent over a collection of berries. The younger native Indian girl, upon noticing Ahiga, let out a squeal and pointed at him excitedly. The older native Indian young woman, his mysterious connection, whipped around. Their eyes met again, and this time a flicker of fear crossed her face. Before Ahiga could act, the younger girl, fueled by childish curiosity, jumped to her feet and ran towards him, giggling. She stopped a few feet away, peering at him with wide, inquisitive eyes. "Are you a spirit?" she asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Ahiga knelt down, his wolf brothers flanking him silently. "No, little one," he said gently. "I am Ahiga." The fear on the older girl's face deepened, but she stepped forward to shield the younger one. "Go back, Awena," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "But Sis Dash," Awena protested, her eyes glued to Ahiga's wolf brothers. Ahiga used a distraction to reach into his pouch and pull out another carved wolf figurine, similar to the one he gave the older girl. He extended it towards a pony, the young native Indian woman. "This is for you," he said softly. A pony, her fear momentarily forgotten, took the figurine with a shy smile. As she clutched it in her hand, a sense of calm washed over the older girl. The fear in her eyes softened, replaced by a wary curiosity. "Who are you?" she finally asked, her voice laced with apprehension. The young native Indian man Ahiga hesitated, his Lakota upbringing warring with a strange pull he felt towards these two native Indian girls. He knew he couldn't reveal his true identity yet, but he wanted to establish some form of trust. Reaching out, he traced a symbol in the date, a circle with a wolf paw print inside. It was a universal symbol of peace amongst the Indians. The girl stared at the symbol, her brow furrowing in concentration. Then, a flicker of recognition crossed her features. Reaching down, she drew a similar symbol next to his, adding a small sun beside it. Ahiga's heart leaped. The sun was a symbol of their people, the Lakota tribe. Did this girl, this Aponi, belong to his tribe? Was she his sister? Before he could ask, a distant horn call broke the silence. The Indian young woman and young girl exchanged worried glances. The older girl rose to her feet, beckoning Awena closer. "We have to go," she said, her voice filled with urgency. Ahiga, despite his desire to learn more, knew he couldn't keep them. "Wait!" he called out as they turned to leave. "Will I see you again?" The young native Indian woman didn't answer, but as they disappeared into the woods, she turned back and threw him a single glance, a look that held a mix of fear, hope, and a flicker of something that looked suspiciously like longing. Ahiga remained by the river for a long time after they were gone, the carved sun symbols his only anchor. He knew their encounter was just the beginning. He had found his own kind. The encounter by the river ignited a fire within the young man Ahiga. He craved to see the young native Indian woman again, to bridge the chasm that separated their worlds. Yet, caution echoed in the whispers of the wind. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and revealing his identity as a wolf boy could put the girl at risk. Days bled into weeks, each sunrise bringing renewed hope and each sunset a pang of disappointment. Ahiga, the young Indian man, continued his covert visits to the riverbank, leaving small tokens, carved figures, brightly colored feathers, hoping to establish a connection. He even practiced rudimentary Lakota phrases he vaguely remembered from his childhood, yearning for the day he could communicate with the Aponi and her tribe. News of the encounter with the wolf boys spread like wildfire through the Indian camp. Aponi, the young native Indian woman thrust into the unexpected spotlight, found herself bombarded with questions from curious native Indian children and apprehensive elders. They peppered her with details. Was he truly raised by wolves? Did he speak their language? Was he a threat or a savior? Aponi, the young native Indian woman, still grappling with the revelation herself, recounted everything she could remember. She described him as tall and strong, with a gentle gaze that held a hint of wildness. His dark hair, worn long and braided, and his thin skin spoke of a life spent under the open sky. Every detail, every inflection in her voice, fueled the growing curiosity within the tribe. That night, a crackling fire illuminated the faces of the Indian council gathered in their largest teepee. The flames cast flickering shadows as the elders discussed the ramifications of Aponi's encounter. Some, scarred by the past and wary of outsiders, argued for caution. Others, their hearts yearning for a connection to their lost son, saw a glimmer of hope. Finally, a wise native Indian old woman named Wainmaha, now the chief of the tribe, her weathered face etched with experience, spoke. Ahiga, if it truly is him, holds a key to our future, she said, her voice raspy but firm. He is a bridge between our worlds, a symbol of the unity we once shared with other tribes. The council murmured in agreement. A decision was made. They would reach out to young Indian man Ahiga, not with weapons and distrust, but with an open hand and a plea for reconciliation. However, they first needed a way to contact him. The next morning, under the watchful gaze of the rising sun, Aponi, the young native Indian woman, ventured back to the riverbank. This time, she carried more than just clothes to wash. She held a woven basket overflowing with ripe berries, a silent offering meant to attract a mysterious visitor. Across the riverbank, hidden within the dense foliage, Ahiga and his wolf companions watched with bated breath. His heart hammered against his ribs as he observed Aponi, her slender frame bathed in the morning light. He couldn't deny the pull he felt towards her, a strange mixture of recognition and something deeper. Suddenly, his wolf brother and sister, ever tuned to their surroundings, let out low growls. Their sharp eyes fixated on a point beyond Aponi, a rustling in the tall grass. Ahiga's gaze followed theirs, his blood turning to ice. Emerging from the tall grass were figures he hadn't expected, Aponi's tribe warriors, a large contingent moving in a coordinated manner. A mixture of emotions flooded him, fear, excitement, and a sliver of hope. These were his people, faces similar to those he remembered from his childhood, albeit older and hardened by years of struggle. Aponi, oblivious to the gathering crowd, continued washing her clothes. Ahiga, torn between his desire to approach her and the sudden presence of his tribe, followed his wolf's cautious lead. They retreated deeper into the forest, Ahiga glancing back one last time at the unfolding scene. Finding a vantage point atop a towering oak, Ahiga surveyed the camp with a mixture of apprehension and longing. He saw Aponi walking back towards a large teepee at the center, seemingly unharmed by the warrior's arrival. His gaze lingered on the teepee, his mind conjuring images of his lost family, his parents, his sisters. He yearned for a connection, to be welcomed back into the fold. As the day wore on, Ahiga observed the tribe from his hidden perch. He saw children playing, women tending to fires, and warriors practicing their fighting skills. A pang of longing tightened his chest. This was the life he should have known, the life that was stolen from him by the soldiers. Nightfall brought a chill that seeped into young native Indian man Ahiga's bones despite the thick fur of his wolves. The distant sounds of laughter and singing from the camp drifted through the trees, a poignant reminder of the life he longed for. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of childhood memories and whispered promises of a future yet to be determined. The next morning, a renewed determination burned in Ahiga's eyes. He knew he couldn't hide forever. He had to face his tribe to understand their intentions. He had to know if they were truly ready to accept him, not just as a wolf boy, but as a Higa, the son of a chief. The morning mist clung to the forest floor as a Higa and his wolf companions emerged from their leafy hideout. The air thrummed with a nervous energy. The weight of the previous day's revelation was heavy on their shoulders. A Higa, his gaze fixed on the Aponi's camp across the river, felt a conflicting mix of trepidation and a yearning he couldn't quite explain. Hopi, ever the cautious one, whined softly, nudging young Ahiga's leg with her wet nose. Ahote mirrored Hopi's concern, his amber eyes gleaming with a watchful intensity. Ahiga understood their unease. These weren't just his people. They were also warriors, their past scarred by violence and betrayal. Would they see him as a savior, a symbol of hope, or a savage raised by wolves, a threat to their way of life? Taking a deep breath, Ahiga steeled his nerves. He wouldn't let fear paralyze him. He had to know. Today, he would bridge the gap, not just a physical one of the rivers, but the emotional chasm that had festered for years. With a determined glint in his eyes, Ahiga signaled Ahote and Hopi to stay hidden within the trees. He wouldn't involve them in this initial contact. This was between him and his people. Slowly, cautiously, he began to make his way towards a riverbank, his movements measured and deliberate. As he emerged from the tree line, a pony, who seemed to be on constant vigil by the water's edge, spotted him. Her eyes widened in surprise, then flickered with a flicker of recognition. She didn't scream or run. Instead, she stood her ground, her gaze locked on his. The young native Indian man Ahiga raised a hand in a gesture of peace, his Lakota upbringing surfacing instinctively. He spoke in their native tongue, his voice hoarse from disuse but filled with sincerity. Ahigala Nupa, people of Ahigala, he called out, I come in peace. I am Ahiga, son of your former chief. His words hung heavy in the air, causing a ripple of commotion within the riverbank. Warriors emerged from their hideouts, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Waimaha, the wise elder native Indian woman, pushed her way through the crowd, her gaze meeting Ahiga's across the river. A long moment of tense silence stretched before Waimaha, the native Indian, spoke. Her voice, though raspy, carried across the water. Ahiga, she echoed, a hint of disbelief lacing her tone. Is it truly you? Ahiga nodded, his heart pounding against his ribs. It is I, he confirmed. I have much to explain. Waimaha, the native old Indian woman, turned to the warriors, her voice firm. Lower your weapons, she commanded. He comes as a guest, not an enemy. The warriors hesitated, their hands hovering near their knives. But under Waimaha's unwavering gaze, they reluctantly complied. A cautious truce had been established, a fragile thread of hope woven across the gurgling river. Waimaha, the native old Indian woman, took a step forward, her eyes searching Ahiga's face. Tell us your story, child, she said gently. Tell us what happened to you all those years ago. The young native Indian man, Ahiga, took a deep breath, the memories flooding back. The fire, the soldiers, the terrifying escape into the wilderness. He spoke of the wolves who found him, nurtured him, and raised him as their own. He spoke of his loneliness, his yearning for his family, and his growing desire to reconnect with his people. As Ahiga spoke, the warriors listened intently, their faces a canvas of changing emotions, shock, sadness, and a flicker of something that might have been pride. A pony, standing a little apart, watching with a newfound respect dawning in her eyes. She saw not just a wolf boy, but Ahiga, a young man burdened by a tragic past but determined to forge a future. When the young man Ahijah finished his tale, a heavy silence descended. The stories of the soldiers' raid and the tribe's decimation were well known, whispered tales passed down through generations. Now, with Ahiga's words, the past became a harsh reality, a wound reopened. Waimaha, the old native Indian woman, broke the silence, her voice filled with quiet strength. We have lost much, Ahiga, she said, but your return gives us hope. You are a bridge between our past and our future. Ahiga's throat tightened with emotion. He wasn't sure what he expected, But acceptance, even tentative acceptance, warmed him from the inside out. "I want to help rebuild what was lost," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to be part of the Ahigala tribe again." Waimaha, the old native Indian, smiled, a flicker of a youthful spirit lighting up. Then she said, "There's much to consider, Ahiga," she said. "The wounds are deep, and trust need to be rebuilt." Her gaze swept over the assembled warriors, some of whom still eyed Ahiga with suspicion. "But your story resonates with truth. We will hold a council tonight to discuss your place among us." Ahiga dipped his head in a gesture of respect. "I understand," he said. "I am willing to wait. But know this," he added, his voice firming. "The Lakota and your people have lived in uneasy peace for too long. I believe there can be a different future, one of coexistence and respect." Waimaha's smile widened. "That is a future we all yearn for, child. But it will take courage and understanding from both sides." A tense peace settled over the scene. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the riverbank, the young man Ahiga retreated into the forest. His wolf brother and sister emerged from their hiding place, their eyes filled with concern. Ahiga relayed the events of the day, his voice filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. "They didn't attack me," he said, scratching a hope behind the ears. "But there's still uncertainty. We'll have to wait and see." The day dragged by as slowly as molasses. Ahiga, the young Indian man, paced restlessly under the trees, his nose on edge. As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he saw a lone figure approaching the riverbank. It was a young native Indian woman, a pony, with a determined glint in her eyes. "They are calling for you," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "The council has reached a decision." Ahiga's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. Taking a deep breath, he met a pony's gaze. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "for everything." A pony nodded, a hint of a smile gracing her lips. "Come," she said, turning back towards the camp. "Our people await." Ahiga, with his wolves padding silently by his side, followed a pony across the now familiar path. As they emerged from the tree line, the entire Ahigala tribe gathered in the center clearing, their eyes fixed on him. The fire crackled in the center, casting flickering shadows that danced on their faces. Ahiga, with his wolves padding silently by his side, followed a pony across the now familiar path. As they emerged from the tree line, the entire Ahigala tribe gathered in the center clearing, their eyes fixed on him. The fire crackled in the center, casting flickering shadows that danced on their faces. "The council has decided." Waimaha, the old native Indian woman, continued, her voice rising slightly. "You will be welcomed back into the Ahigala tribe. But with your return comes a responsibility to act as a bridge between our people and the Lakota forest." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Ahiga's chest swelled with both relief and the weight of his new role. "We understand your ties to the wolves," Waimaha added, a faint smile playing on her lips. "They are part of who you are. But know this, you are Ahigala now. This is your home." A cheer erupted from the crowd, a sound that resonated with a warmth Ahiga hadn't felt in years. It was a sound of acceptance, of hope for a new beginning. As the fire crackled and the tribe celebrated, Ahiga knew his journey had just begun. He would bridge the gap between his two worlds, not just for himself, but for the future of his people in the Lakota forest. He would be a symbol of peace, a testament to the enduring power of family, and the unwavering spirit of a boy raised by wolves. The following days were a whirlwind for young native Indian man, Ahiga. The initial jubilation of his return gave way to a whirlwind of introductions, cultural re-immersion, and strategy sessions with the Ahigala elders. Ahiga, the young native Indian man, reveled in reconnecting with his heritage. He learned about the tribe's struggles in his absence, the constant fear of soldiers' raids, and the dwindling resources that forced him to move further into the wilderness. He learned the Ahigala way of hunting, trapping, and using medicinal herbs passed down through generations. One evening, As he sat by the fire with Waimaha, the wisdom of the elders, he confessed his worries. The other tribes won't trust me easily, he admitted, staring into the flames. They may see me as a traitor, a pawn in your game. Waimaha nodded sagely. There is truth in your words, child, but trust is like a fragile seed. It needs time and care to grow. What can I do? Ahigo asked, a flicker of determination sparking in his eyes. Waimaha smiled gently. You can begin by sharing your story. Tell them of your life with the wolves, of the Lakota values you hold dear. Show them that you are not just a higgler, but a bridge between many cultures. The other tribe warriors, led by a stoic native Indian man named Tatanka, Bison, eyed him with suspicion. Ahigo recognized Tatanka. He was one of the boys he used to play with before the soldiers came. Ahigo, the young native Indian man, raised his hand in greeting, the Lakota symbol of peace etched on his palm. Tatanka, he said, his voice hoarse, it is I, Ahigo. Tatanka, the native Indian chief, stared at him, disbelief warring with a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Ahigo recounted his story, his time with the wolves, and his return to the Ahigala tribe. They spoke of Waimaha's desire for peace and the hope of coexistence. Tatanka listened intently, his face an unreadable mask. When Ahigo finished, a tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Tatanka spoke, his voice low and rumbling. The scars of the past run deep. Ahigo, he said. Trust is a broken thing, difficult to mend. Ahigo nodded, understanding the weight of his words. I know, he said, but a future of endless war serves no one. We must try. Tatanka pondered for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Finally, he turned to Ahigo. Tell Waimaha, he said, a hint of a challenge in his voice, that a meeting can be arranged, but let her come bearing gifts, a token of good faith. A wave of relief washed over Ahigo. This wasn't a complete acceptance, but it was a start. He had managed to plant another seed of hope, a chance for dialogue between the warring tribes. With renewed purpose, Ahigo and his wolf companions turned back towards the Ahigla camp. He knew the road to peace wouldn't be easy, but with every step, he felt the weight of generations resting on his shoulders. He was the bridge, the symbol of a possible future, and he wouldn't falter.